a lot of deaths, what they're doing is they're re-categorizing all the deaths. And there's a lot of people speaking out about this. A lot of ICU nurses, a lot of doctors are saying, listen, we're getting these instructions of how to categorize people when they come in here, and we're basically treating anything as a COVID-related case until we find out otherwise. Think about that, folks. They're treating anybody who comes into the hospital as having COVID-19 until they learn otherwise, and so they're giving them treatment for COVID-19. One of those treatments is to put people straight on a ventilator. If someone comes in there with pneumonia or something like that and you put them on a ventilator, you'll push the fluid in their lungs deep into their lungs and you'll kill them. And you'll find that 80% of the people that they put onto ventilators have died. So you might ask why this is the procedure, why there is this automatic categorizing of people to have COVID-19 and to whack them on a ventilator. Well, as pointed out by a US Senator, a Minnesota Senator, Dr. Scott Jensen, and according to a video that I posted the other day, an interview on Fox News, Dr. Jensen points out that if a patient comes in and is diagnosed as having COVID-19, the hospital gets $13,000, and if they get put on a ventilator, the hospital gets $39,000.
Anytime healthcare intersects with dollars, it gets awkward. Right now, Medicare has determined that if you have a COVID-19 admission to the hospital, you'll get paid $13,000. If that COVID-19 patient goes on a ventilator, you get $39,000, 3 times as much. Nobody can tell me after 35 years in the world of medicine that sometimes those kinds of things impact on what we do. Some physicians really have a bent towards public health, and they will put down influenza or whatever because that's their preference. I try to stay very specific, very precise. If I know I've got pneumonia, that's what's going on, the death certificate. I'm not going to add stuff just because it's convenient.
And they're virtually categorizing anybody that comes in there as having COVID-19 and looking for any excuse they can to put COVID-19 or coronavirus on the death certificate.
Well, last Friday I received a 7-page document that sort of told me that if I had an 86-year-old patient that had pneumonia but was never tested for COVID-19, but sometime after she came down with pneumonia, we learned that she had been exposed to her son who had no symptoms, but later on was identified with COVID-19, that it would be appropriate to diagnose on the death certificate COVID-19. Now, we've not done that. If someone has the pneumonia after and it's in the middle of a flu epidemic, and I don't have a test on influenza, I don't diagnose influenza on the death certificate. I will say this elderly patient died of pneumonia.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but my heart is sinking right now as you're telling me this. You're a doctor. Why in the world would they be sending you out information to fill out death certificates, whether the person's been diagnosed with COVID-19 or not, but then to say in the death certificate this person's death was caused by COVID-19? That does not sound right to me.
I went to the person in our office who does most of the death certificates over the last 10, 20 years, and I said, does this sound right? I had her look at the documents that I printed off, and she said, well, we've always been told that you always put down just facts. You don't put down any probabilities. You don't put any presumptions down. It's just what you know. And so this is concerning. And it actually gets to your point, Chris. When we start talking about the data that goes into the modeling, we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we being forthright? Are we sharing with the public? Minnesota, North Dakota, we don't need to be having it sugar-coated. We want to know what's going into your modeling.
Now think about what he just said. If you go in there with a collapsed lung, perhaps you've got emphysema, you've got all sorts of problems, all sorts of premorbidities, you go in there and you're not diagnosed as having coronavirus, they've done a test and you don't come up positive, but someone in your household tests positive for COVID-19, even though they don't show any symptoms, then the hospital should assume you are infected with COVID-19 and that is your cause of death. Think about what I just said and ask me if you can see anything wrong or dishonest in that, folks, because I think it's absolutely ridiculous.